So, against all expectations, in a very, very shocking turn of events, Nigeria has been knocked out of the African Nations Cup at the round of 16 stage. A very shocking result, it has to be said. A very painful evening for Nigerian football followers across the world. But that's what it is. That's what the game is about. You win some, you lose some. It's just painful that um this painful event had to happen in the hands of a very average Tunisian side. It's really, really sad. But I suppose it's not all gloom. We can look back at this performance and learn from it as we look ahead to the World Cup. Because for me, it's not all bad. I see this as just an eye opener, for the World Cup proper. Um, we just have to accept the defeat. It's what it is. We've lost way out. We need to move ahead. We need to move on. So we'll have to. In this video, we're going to take a look at some of the causes, some of the reasons behind this failure, and I'm going to look at it from two perspectives. First, I'll look at the immediate causes of this loss to Tunisia, and I'll also look at the remote causes of this loss to Tunisia. If you're new here, please subscribe. We need a subscription. Please subscribe so we can do more of these videos together. Now, number one, the very first thing that I observed about this team going into the Tunisia game was there was some bit of complacency, some bit of overconfidence, and maybe arrogance, with the team. Generally, I'd say that bit of arrogance, that bit of complacency, a bit of tactical deficiency, as well as a little bit of hard luck. They all came together and contributed to the Super Eagles' downfall at this stage of this competition. Now, the defense was solid. Defense was okay, was relatively okay, but it just wasn't well protected. For instance, this lone goal that came from a shot from outside the box, because the Tunisian captain was not closed down adequately. Joe Aribo was last to get to him after he had skinned Olaino. There was no closing down from the middle. Nobody closed him down in the midfield, and he had a clear shot on goal, which swerved and beat the goalkeeper. A lot of people are castigating the goalkeeper. Please, Maduka Okoye is not entirely to blame for that goal. Any goalkeeper in world football could concede that goal. It was a beautiful shot. It was a great shot, well taken, and it swerved slightly and beat the goalkeeper. He still managed to get a hand on it. So I don't understand the way people are castigating Maduka Okoye for considering that goal. Edwin van der Sar would have considered that goal. Peter Schmeichel would have considered that goal. Even the very best, Peter Cech would consider that goal. As long as there's a swervy ball, it's always a little more difficult. So please, you should take it easy on Maduka Okoye. I would blame, like I said, it's an all-round attitude of complacency on the part of the players. After we conceded was when the players started playing. They started pressing as much as we saw in the previous games. But up until that point in the second half, there was no pressing. They didn't press as much as they did in the first 2-3 games of this competition. So in some way, they had written off the Tunisians, especially with all the talk about COVID and so on. They had unconsciously written off the Tunisians and just came back to it after the Tunisians had gotten the goal. So it's a bit of our attitude, okay, on the part of the players that cost us. Number two, the red card changed the game, obviously, right? So the referee had a part in this. I feel like it looked to an extent, I'm not making excuses here, but it looked to an extent like there was an agenda against the Nigerian side, because the referee was making a lot of wrong calls. All right, there were a couple of calls that were very questionable, in the first half, and it culminated in a harsh red card. Now, Alex Iwobi did stamp on the player, but was that very deliberate? No, it wasn't. He was in a bid to retrieve. It was his ball, right? It wasn't even a 50-50 ball. It was in his ball, and he was stretching to just get more control of his ball and stamped on the player. A yellow card was fair enough in a game of this magnitude. So I feel the red card was a bit harsh. I mean, I can't remember the last time a VAR check was, conducted on a red card on a tackle that was made in the center circle, somewhere around the center circle. So it just looked like there's more to it than the referee's officiating. So it was a harsh red card, but ultimately played a major role in the result of that game. Again, I think the poor team tactics too, the selection and the tactics also played a part. I have said it several times in the prior games that Samuel Chukwueze has not been at his best in this tournament, and so I don't think he deserves that. Now, it is not it's conventional to say you don't change a winning team. Now everybody knows that you don't change a winning team. Yes, you don't change a winning team, but what you do is you improve a winning team. Okay, so you had your starting 11, which was great, but Chukwueze was not contributing enough. Every time Iwobi came on, he did a bit more on that right side. Now, in the third game against Guinea-Bissau, Iwobi and Wakali started, and they didn't really play up to because of the drop in the level across the entire 11. So I believe if it started, it would be maybe even Wakali together with the Iena Chos, together with the Awunis, Ndidi and the rest of the guys, then maybe, just maybe, they would have done a lot better than what you had on the right side. Samuel Chukwueze absolutely, apart from the shot he took in the second half, has not impressed in this tournament, and I don't see why he should start all the games. So the selection was faulty, and Wakali too should have started ahead of Aribo in some sense. Now, that's not to write off Aribo. I will say it again, but Wakali gives us a bit of an attacking edge. He gives us a bit more creativity and puts the attack on the front foot, which was lacking. Aribo played side by side with Ndidi deep in the midfield, and so that entire space was vacant, was open. Iheanacho just struggled in that space. Wakali would have given us a bit more bite, a bit more grip, a bit more control of the midfield in an advanced position. That's something Aribo was not able to do. So I suppose those are some of the immediate causes of that loss to Tunisia. Now, from a more remote perspective, first and foremost, Coach Austin Eguavon. Now, sacking Gennaro Rowe was not a wrong decision, but it was taken at the wrong time. All right. So enter Austin Eguavon, who has done a remarkable thing. I'll still give him kudos for the change in the psyche of the players, so the change in the attitude of the players. So Eguavon came in and did that, but he did not have enough time. He did not have enough time to make a lot of changes in this team. And from what we have seen of him, I believe he had more time. He probably would have put together a better side. But he just came in and couldn't make too many changes. So he just had to make do with the team that was in place. Right? And then what he was able to do was now change the psyche and the attitude of the team. Make it more aggressive, make it more purposeful, make it more flexible. But unfortunately, there was not a lot of tactical flexibility because he did not have enough time to watch these players, to train with these players, to assess their individual and collective abilities. So that's where we flawed. Maybe he would have done better. I'm almost certain he would have done better if he had more time with these players to properly assess them and select the very best. Mwakali was never in the equation under Gennaro Rowe, but Eguavon brought him back into the team. So a few players like that who never really had a shout under Gennaro Rowe. So if Eguavon had more time, a longer time with this team, I am certain he probably would have made a few more changes than what we saw. Now, another remote cause of this failure is a very, very obvious problem in that team, which I actually mentioned it earlier, the lack of creativity in the midfield. The team still lacks creative edge. It still lacks players who can hold the ball, who can keep the ball, control the midfield, and dictate the pace of the game. That is still a major lapse in this team. Now, like I said, maybe if Eguavon had more team, he would have been able to, assess a few more players. I still think a player like Kingsley Sokari deserves a place in this team, even if just to assess him. He is more aggressive, he's more tenacious on the ball. So, I suppose we deserve a chance to have assessed as many options as possible in the midfield. Assess every single player who can play a creative midfield role for this team. Assess them and then evaluate if they are as good or better than the players we have already in the team. So that lack of a balanced creative midfield is still a major problem. the loss of Ogenekare Etebo too, played its part. But Etebo is not that creative midfielder you like in that. He would have still stayed side by side Ndidi, and then we still need a creative offensive player. This team still lacks a creative offensive player, and that's one of the remote causes of this failure. The injuries to Victor Osimhen, the withdrawals of players like Victor Osimhen also played a role. We didn't have the full complement of the players we need to have, Paulo Nachu, etc. So that also was a problem for this team. Now, the Super Eagles players, this is a very, very not everybody wants to say this, but it's a fact that has to be said. In all truth, the Super Eagles players are only just good enough. That's the reality. They're only just good enough. They're still young with a lot of potentials, but they're not yet high up there. Okay, perhaps just a few players, maybe Wilfred and Didi, and one or two others can really rank amongst the very best in the world. But on the whole, the team is still a very, very, very average team. And unfortunately, it had to take this for us to see that. Now, the difference is under General Raw, the team was very ordinary because he had done his best. He had built the team. That's about what he did. He built a good team, right, and took us from zero to a certain point, right. And after that, it was so bad. It was so plain. It was so ordinary that Eguavon comes in a matter of weeks, we see a more vibrant team, a more hard-working team, a more aggressive team, and we feel like, wow, we've arrived. No, it doesn't take away the fact that this team, the composition of this team is still just average. Mostly, predominantly average players. They are not exactly as still, for me, they're still not as good as the team that won the Nations Cup in 1994. They're still not as good as that. They're still not as good as the class of 94 at all. This team is not yet as great as that team. Okay, so we have to acknowledge, we have to accept the fact that this team is not composed of the very best of the best that Nigeria's ever seen. All right. Again, there's no real leader in the Super Eagles, to be honest. As at 2018, the last World Cup, the Super Eagles still had Mikel Obi, who was a dominant figure, who had presence, who had authority, who people could look up, who the players could look up to. When they lose idea, they had lost about what to do, they'll just play the ball to Mikel Obi. This team lacks that kind of player. This team lacks a leader in the middle of the park or in the team. William Troost-Ekong is still growing into that role. He's not yet there. That's the reality. All right, he's still growing into that role. Wilfred Ndidi too is somewhat growing into that role of a leader because of experience he's had over the last few years. Ahmed Musa is supposedly the leader of this team, but the truth is Ahmed Musa is well respected, fantastic, experienced player, has been there for years, so he's well respected amongst the players, but he is not a natural leader. So that lapse, there's that gap missing, in the team. So that's something that I don't know needs to be addressed. I don't know how that will be addressed, but we need a natural leader in the Super Eagles. So that's so much for the Nations Cup. It's painful. It's sad that the Super Eagles got knocked out at this stage. Nobody saw it coming, but let's look on the bright side. What are the lessons we have learned from this? From these points we have raised here should give us a direction as to where to go. Because we still have. I always felt the Nations Cup was a test run for the World Cup. So now we have seen these lapses. We have seen that this team is not ready. So let's not, wallow in the pain of the defeat. Let's build on this. Now that we have seen how naked we are, this is the time to build on the lessons we have learned, over the last week or two in the Nations Cup. We still have the World Cup coming up. So this is the time to make amends. This is the time to get it right. If this team had gone ahead to win the Nations Cup, we would have felt that we have arrived. We have felt like, wow, this is the greatest team ever. But the Nations Cup, this loss to Tunisia has exposed that this team is not yet ready for the World Cup. So while we lick our wounds, let's try and build on the lessons we've learned. So for the World Cup qualifying, we'll have the last round of playoffs where we'll be facing Ghana, who equally have been knocked down knocked out of the Nations Cup. They lost out in the first round, so they're also wounded. But fortunately, unfortunately, Nigeria's joined them out of the tournament as well. So they will be seeing the World Cup qualifiers as the opportunity to bounce back, same as Nigeria. So it's gonna be even more tedious, and the rivalry between Nigeria and Ghana. So we need to learn and get it right against it. We can't afford not to qualify for the World Cup after this embarrassment, right? So Ghana too, after the embarrassment of the Nations Cup, cannot afford to lose out as well of the World Cup. So it's gonna be double, even triple difficult the last two games, the playoff games for the World Cup. So we need to learn from this and rebuild that team. So whether or not Eguavon is staying on as coach or going to get a new coach, there's a deal with this new guy coming in. This is the time to act. We need to start acting tomorrow. We need to, like, as early as the very next day, we need to set the ball rolling with regards to building this team, with regards to remedying this scenario, because the World Cup is just, with the qualifiers are in March, the playoffs are in March, so the notches is not far. So this is the time to get our acts together and build on this towards the World Cup. So lessons must be learned. This team needs a good tactician who will utilize the talent. The talents are there. The players are not bad. They're just predominantly average players, but a good tactician can be. We've seen them. They can be a unit. We've seen they can grow into a unit, and that's a stronger force. So we need a tactician who can utilize the various strengths of these individual players and mold them and groom them into a good side. The talent is there. They may not be the best in the world, but the talent is clearly there. So for effectiveness or maximal output, we need to get a tactician, a good coach, a good manager of men who can bring out the very best in this player. So that's how it's been. It's a sad day for Nigerian football, but what can we do? Let's build on this. We'll take another step back and then bounce back even better. So thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe and stay on. And we'll have another video. We'll actually evaluate we'll review the Nations Cup, the entire performance of the team during the Nations Cup in our next video. So we'll do a video on the Nigerian side at the 2021 African Nations Cup. So I'll see you soon.